Welcome to the WalterFootball.com podcast. This is episode 386. We're doing our week 4 NFL picks against the spread for the 2022 NFL season. Joined once again by Jacob Camenker from the Sporting News. Jacob, how was your amazing week 3?
Hey, it was pretty great. Probably one of the best weeks I've ever put together. I don't know if this trumps my 13-1 record from a week a couple years ago in 2020. But you know, this time around, we went 13-2-1 against the spread. We went into last night's game 13-1-1, going for a 14th win. The Giants couldn't deliver, but that was about the only disappointment of the week. The other loss I had was in the Raiders-Titans game. I was on the Raiders, but I didn't have any units on them. My push was in a go-girl game between the Texans and the Bears. I had no units on that. So almost every bet I made this week was a winner. I won a 6-team parlay on Sunday at $5 into 232 from 6 results that I can't remember off the top of my head. But you know, sometimes you just throw those out there and just see if you can hit on any of them. And we did. We hit it big. So great week. Hoping this week brings some more good fortune our way. But, you know, we'll see how this game slate pans out. I like some games on this one. I haven't looked as much at the late games. I'm a little bit flying blind on the late games today, guys. I got hung up at work a little bit. So we're going to see what happens here in the second half of this podcast. You'll be carrying us at that point.
It'll be fun nonetheless. I was 11-4-1 against the spread last week. So pretty good. The only bet I lost on Sunday was the Lions money line. It looked like a winner for a while. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown, DeAndre Swift, they both got hurt, unfortunately, and Minnesota came back. But still not going to complain. I mean, we went 5-0 in our super contest entry, which was great. And we're 13-2 on the year. So hopefully we can continue that. I'm excited about this week. I think this week's a little bit harder than last week. I loved a lot of games last week. I love a few games this week, not as many, but still I think we should have a good card ready to go on Saturday. But anyway, before we get to the games, please hit like, subscribe, comment below, share this video. Visit the link in the description for the merch store. I am, as you can see on YouTube, I am wearing a gray Walter Football t-shirt. We're running low on supply, so get them while you can. Actually, we're not running low supply, but pretend that we are so you can get one and support the show. All right, let's begin with the Thursday night game. It's a great one. Everyone's number one team now on NFL.com and ESPN. They have the Dolphins as the number one team in their power rankings. The Dolphins, despite that, are 4-point underdogs in Cincinnati. This line actually opened up Cincinnati -3, and then it went to 3.5. And I was typing this early Tuesday at 3.5, and now it's 4. So who do you like in this game?
Yeah, I want to point out the Dolphins are number one in our Sporting News power rankings too. I'm not the one that wrote that. I might have put them a little bit lower, but yeah, they're getting a lot of buzz right now. But I'm on the Bengals here. This seems like the perfect spot in which to fade Miami. I know I said that last week before the Bills game, but I switched to the Dolphins because the Bills were just so banged up going into that game. They were missing their entire starting secondary, and you just had a feeling after seeing that Miami would be able to move the ball enough on them. That game wasn't as much of a shootout as I thought it was going to be, but it was so hot. The team just wore down as the second half went along. So now from a motivational edge, the Dolphins could have reason to get up for this game. They could say, hey, if we win this, beat last year's AFC champions and improve to 4-0, we're going to look really great. But really, their white whale was beating the Bills with Tua Tagovailoa. Like, Tua had never beaten the Bills. He had trouble against them a lot. I mean, he looked dreadful against them in that one late season game where they had to win to get into the playoffs. And I think the Bills beat them like 55-17 or something. And the 17 points came in garbage time. So that was a bigger win for the Dolphins. They're not going to be as focused for this Bengals game. They're going to be exhausted too, because they just played a game in 95-degree heat and now have to go out and play on Thursday night on the road. And their quarterback's a bit banged up. Tua suffered some sort of back injury. It looked like a head injury. Frankly, I'm shocked that he wasn't put in concussion protocol in game, even though they were like immediately it was a back injury, because his coach even thought it was a head injury at one point. So that he dodged that was pretty amazing. But I mean, the back issue is kind of concerning. The ankle injury is kind of concerning on a short week where they're already going to be tired. I just think the Bengals need this game more. They have a talented team. I know the results haven't been there yet. Their line has had trouble blocking, but Miami blitzes a lot, and Joe Burrow is elite against the blitz. and Miami generates most of their pressure from the blitz. So this is kind of a better matchup for Joe Burrow in a weird way because his line won't have to block as long because he'll be throwing hot routes off the blitz. So everything's stacking up that Cincinnati could earn a big win here. Miami's results to me haven't been all that impressive. Like they made a 21-point comeback against the Ravens, but they trailed by 21 in that game before the corners got hurt. The Bills were banged up. And the Patriots, they only beat really by one touchdown and then a strip sack by Melvin Ingram on Mac Jones. So, they've won 3 games, and that's good for them, but I don't think they're quite as good as their record says they are. I think Cincinnati will prove that this week and get a win that kind of sends Miami a little bit back down to earth.
Yeah, I'm with you on this game. It's kind of telling that this line moved so much. So I said the line opened up at -3, and now it's 4. And the advanced spread on this game was Bengals -2. And so I thought when Miami beat Buffalo, I thought this line would go the other way, and I thought maybe Miami would be the favorite in this game, and we get good value with the Bengals, and that's not the case at all. Apparently, the sharps agree. Like the sharps have been all over Cincinnati. And you made some great points. Like, first of all, the Dolphins might be flat coming off that big win. Although they're underdogs, so maybe that's not as guaranteed. But second, Joe Burrow against the blitz is going to be really good. So it's a great matchup for him. And then also the Dolphins, like you said, they haven't really done all that much except for the fourth quarter against the Ravens. Like, just look at their season otherwise. That first Patriots game, they scored 13 points, and 7 of those points came on a 4th and 7 that kind of caught Bill Belichick off guard. So I'm not really putting that much stock into that win. And then against Buffalo, sure, they won, but they were outgained 497 to 212. Buffalo just dominated that game. They had so many miscues, though, like Gabriel Davis dropping the touchdown. Matt Milano had a pick 6 in his hands. He dropped it. They missed the 30-yard field goal. What else happened? I feel like Josh Allen had Devin Singletary open for a touchdown, and he didn't see him on the penultimate drive. So, like, I feel like if you simulated that game a lot, Buffalo would have won more often than not. And so I think that Miami's results are misleading, but we're not getting the line value, unfortunately. So I was really hoping to get the Bengals as a home dog, or maybe like -1 or something. But -4, it's just not a good opportunity to bet this game. That said, I'm still going to be on Cincinnati, maybe for a small bet if Tua is banged up. If it sounds like Tua is fully healthy, then I'm not going to bet this game.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna be on this for 1 to 2 units. I'll put 1 unit on if Tua's healthy and there's no problems with him. And if there's kind of like, oh, he's got the dealing with the lingering injury and the back's a little tight, then I'll probably be on 2 units. I just think that Miami's going to be so tired. And Cincinnati, I know their win over the Jets wasn't necessarily easy or anything, but it was much easier than what Miami just went through. And maybe they'll be a little bit more motivated for this game as an underdog, but I think they might also look at this as an opportunity to be like, all right, this is kind of where if we crash early and we're exhausted from the heat, this is just going to, we're just going to have to let this one go in the second half a little bit, even though they've made that big comeback earlier.
Yeah. Patrick Pillow asking my 2 biggest questions so far. What is wrong with the Bengals line, and has Russell Wilson fallen off? I don't think Wilson has fallen off. I mean, he's still learning the system. Plus, there have been some coaching mishaps, and Denver has been pretty efficient offensively before the Sunday night game. And then they played a great 49ers defense on Sunday night. So I wouldn't really strike that against them. And then Cincinnati's offensive line, I mean, they faced TJ Watt and Micah Parsons the first 2 weeks. They got back on track last week, and they've had some injuries. Jonah Williams isn't playing as well, maybe because of those edge rushers, and Lyle Collins is banged up. So I think their offensive line is going to improve as the season goes on.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I've been doing a lot of research. I'm going to have a story on the Bengals offensive line for Thursday. There are a couple things. I think Jonah Williams has regressed a bit, as you mentioned. I think it might be because rookie Cordell Volson's had some trouble next to him. So, not that position was a strength last year, but it's kind of hard if you have a rookie with tough assignments on one side and you're getting tough assignments and can't help. And then, like you said, Collins has been banged up. So I think that's really the root cause of it. They also just need time to gel. They have 4 new starters, so that's another thing. And Lamont just mentioned that we were right about the Chiefs game. If I remember correctly, Lamont, you were saying there was no chance that the Colts would beat the Chiefs last week or they would not cover. It would be like the Titans-Bills game. Hey, that's the beautiful thing about the NFL, right? We never know what's going to happen. We can make predictions all we want, and we got that one right, so it felt nice. But hey, if you make that game happen a million times, the Chiefs probably win it most of the time. So got a little lucky there.
Very lucky. I was kind of sweating that out. And I was talking to Quacky Takes, our other super contest friend, the friend of the show, and he like that was our fifth pick in our super contest entry, and like we were texting back and forth. We're like, oh my god, like we're gonna lose this. We can't believe this happened. It was just amazing. I really can't believe the Colts covered. I like there had to be so many things to happen for the Chiefs not to cover that game, and they all happened. It was insane. But yeah, I mean, the NFL is funny. The Jaguars beat the Bills last year, so really anything can happen on any given Sunday. All right, next game. This is a London game. This is on 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific time. So feel bad for you guys on the West Coast who have to wake up for this. Vikings at the Saints, or not at the Saints, versus the Saints. Should fix that. This line opened up -2.5. There are some threes available, like Bovada. You can get +3, -115. If you like the Vikings, you can get -2.5, -115. So really, it's kind of dealer's choice here. So who do you like in this game?
Yeah, I like the Saints here. I don't know how many units yet. I've got 1 to 2 marked down. You probably convinced me to go for more. Part of me thinks that I don't want to trust Jameis Winston because he has a broken back, but at some point he's probably going to start getting better. And he has a good amount of weapons around him. Chris Olave looked great last week. Michael Thomas has been good. He got hurt last week, foot injury, so I'll have to monitor that. Sounds like he'll be okay though. But even like Traquan Smith looked good last week. So, the Saints all of a sudden look like they have a pretty decent offense. And I think that they're going to be able to move the ball on the Vikings, who have a weakness at corner. And, I think a lot of people look at the Vikings and they're like, oh, they're a 2-1 team. This team is pretty good. This team beat the Packers. Oh, they beat the Lions. Yeah, they had the loss to the Eagles, but the Eagles are undefeated. But in reality, that win over the Packers, as we talked about at length, wasn't that impressive because their O-line was banged up in that, and Rodgers just didn't have time to throw. And then the Lions should have beaten them last week. They gave up one giant reception at the end of the game for the touchdown. And they also lost Amon-Ra St. Brown and DeAndre Swift for portions of the game. So I think that if they had those two players, they also lost Tracy Walker too. If they had those players, I think the Lions end up winning outright, which would have been very nice for us because we have a lot of bets on the Lions over win total and alternate over in playoffs and stuff like that. But anyway, I think this is a good opportunity to fade the Vikings. I don't have a great read on this because in London games in the past, like certain teams just haven't showed up. So it's possible that Dennis Allen and the Saints could get over there and just be like, we are completely flat. We have no reason to play here. We would normally be playing at the Superdome, and instead we're playing at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, I believe is where they're playing. I don't know the actual title of it. I just know that is where they play. So, but I still think the Saints are the right side here. They have the cornerback talent needed to slow down Justin Jefferson. If you do that, you can rattle Kirk Cousins a bit. So I like the Saints here. I would take the +3. I'm not going to bet them at +2.5 probably, but I think the Vikings are overrated right now.
Yeah, I think they're very overrated. If it wasn't for Miami, I think you can make the case they're the most overrated team in the NFL. Their big claim to fame this year has been beating the Packers in Week 1, but Green Bay was missing all of its receivers and all of its offensive linemen, with at least three offensive linemen. So that win wasn't as impressive as people think. And then since then they got blown out in Philadelphia, and then Week 3 they should have lost to Detroit, but the Lions had so many injuries, and still the Vikings needed a miracle touchdown at the end to beat the Lions. So I don't understand why this line is a Vikings -2.5 or -3. Like I think it should be closer to pick them. I think these teams are about even. And if you can get +3, I think it's great value for the Saints. And think about it. The Saints, the past 2 weeks, they hung tight with the Buccaneers, but Jameis Winston was injured, and so they couldn't score for more than 3 points. But still, they limited Tampa's offense to 13 points. So, and Mike Evans was in that game. So I feel like if they could do that to Tampa, I think they could limit Minnesota as well. And also last week, they outgained the Panthers by a wide margin, but they made so many mistakes, like the Alvin Kamara fumble return for a touchdown. They had a blocked field goal. They missed the chip shot field goal. They had an interception that was tipped at the line of scrimmage. Like, so many things went wrong for the Saints in that game. If they had beaten the Panthers, which I think they would have on most occasions, this line would be -2.5 or even 3. I think the this would be like Minnesota -1 at most, probably. So I think we're getting good value, especially with +3. At +3, I love the Saints. At +2.5, I like the Saints. 3 is the key number in the NFL, of course. But yeah, either way, I'm going to be on the Saints.
Yeah, I would definitely bet up to 3 if you can. Like, even if you have to take, is it VIG? Is that what it's called? I always screw this up. The
Yeah, the big. It's like, yeah.
increased VIG, is that the right terminology here? Yeah, the like -125 or 130.
Right. It's -115 of Bovada right now, which is like, it's fine. Like, I think the math says it's right to pay up to -127 for a 3. I'd have to recheck that, but I think that's what it is.
Cool. Yeah, that makes sense to me. So good lesson for everyone to learn out there. If you can bet up the VIG and get the -127 for a 3, you got to do it. So that'll be my plan on this one. I might wait just a bit. I'm not going to wait to the point where it gets to like the line moving in the other direction, but I think that 3 is key for the Saints here.
Yeah, for sure. Will asking, Hurts is the early MVP leader. I would put Lamar Jackson 1 and then Hurts 2. What would you do?
So I have money on both of them, which is very nice.
Same.
I bet 4 people to win MVP before the season. One of them was by accident, which you will laugh at when you find out who I bet by accident. So I bet Lamar Jackson. I bet Jalen Hurts. I bet Jared Goff because I wanted to be on with you with your 200-1 Jared Goff bet just in case. But when I tried to bet Jared Goff the first time, I accidentally clicked Jerick McKinnon. So I accidentally have a bet on Jerick McKinnon to win MVP.
What are the odds on that?
not as good as you'd think. It was probably the same as Jared Goff, maybe like 250-1. But
oh my God.
You know, it was a $5 bet, and I don't think I'm going to be able to get it back. So whatever.
When you said that, I thought you maybe bet on the wrong Josh Allen or something. But yeah, I don't think your McKinnon bet is going to cash. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. But the other 2 are in pretty good shape right now. I would also put Lamar in front of Jalen Hurts right now. I don't say that just because I have more money on Lamar. And I've been predicting him to win it all year. I think if you look at what he's done to lift that offense with, you know, they have Rashad Bateman and Mark Andrews, but nothing else. He has been the entire run game and the entire passing game. And he's put up numbers that were better through 3 games than his unanimous MVP season. So I think if you look at it through that lens, you have to say, yeah, Lamar has definitely carried the Ravens to bigger heights. But, you know, they still have to get some key wins, and he has to play well against the Bills this week, especially to avoid falling behind Hurts, who's probably going to continue to look really good as the season goes along.
I'll say this about Hurts. I would have him number 2. But if the Eagles would let him throw in the second half of these blowouts that they've had, like, I think you could make the case that he would be number 1. Like, I think against the Redskins, he attempted only 8 passes in the second half, if I'm not mistaken. And then also in the Vikings game, like, he barely threw. So I feel like the Eagles just go into this protective shell to protect their lead, and I guess it's worked so far. But it's hurting Hurts' MVP run for what it's worth. But yeah, I would have Lamar Jackson number 1. And as for McKinnon, here's the question: would you bet him at 100,000 to 1? Because I don't think I would.
Probably not. No. So yeah. I got really ripped off in this one. I got a backup running back to win MVP.
Yeah, that kind of stinks. Yeah, $10 to win $1 million might sound tempting, but then you realize that you're just lighting $10 on fire, so you probably shouldn't do that. All right, let's get to the real Sunday games. The first one is Titans at the Colts. This line opened up Colts -3.5, still -3.5, but you can find some -3s. Like I'm looking at Bovada -3, -120. So again, you have your choice. So who do you like in this game?
Yeah, I'll take the 3.5, and I'll be with the Titans in this one. You know, we were right about the Colts last week, but as we kind of hinted at, they got a little lucky. The Chiefs kind of, in a lot of ways, just kind of tricked and kicked themselves out of at least 7 points. You had the fake field goal that didn't result in a first down. They had the Matt Amendola missed extra point. They had the Matt Amendola missed field goal as well. So that right there is 7 points. If you make all the kicks there, that's 7 points. And the Chiefs win. We're not talking about the Colts in like this high regard. They'd be an 0-3 team while the Titans would be coming off of a win over the Raiders. And I think that people would feel a lot different about this game if that was the case. But now the Colts beat the Chiefs and everyone is all over them. And I just don't see it right now. Like they didn't do anything that impressive to beat the Chiefs. The Chiefs beat themselves a little bit. The Colts made some good plays, and Matt Ryan was clutch in the red zone to Jelani Woods. But this line's just a little bit too high. We're getting the key number of 3 if you go plus 3.5 with the Titans. And as Andrew just mentioned in the comments, Mike Vrabel owns the Colts. He's 4-1 outright against them in the last 5 meetings. So I think that the Titans are going to be in position to cover here. These games tend to be close. And look, make no mistake, I don't like the Titans much as a team, but they have Derrick Henry. They can move the ball on these Colts. They can run a little bit. We don't know if Shaq Leonard's going to be back. If he's back, maybe I might like the Colts a little bit more. Maybe I wouldn't bet the Titans outright at this number. But I still think that the Titans are going to find a way to move the ball on the Colts. They move the ball on the Raiders with ease. The Colts are better than the Raiders, but I still think that the Titans have the receiving talent needed to move the ball a little bit in addition to Henry's running. So I'll be on the Titans probably for 0 to 2 units. It really depends on Shaq Leonard. We've been saying that for weeks now. But I think that the Titans are probably the right side. I just don't think they're very good, so I don't want to bet them that much.
Yeah, this is close to a go girl game for me. The only reason it's not is because both these teams have a chance to make the playoffs because the division's so bad. But really, I'm not a fan of either of these teams. I mean, we're 2 weeks removed, or I guess like 8 days removed from the Titans just getting absolutely obliterated by the Bills. Like they weren't even competitive in that game. And then the Colts, they lost to the Jaguars 24-0. And you're right. I mean, they had so much good luck in that Chiefs game. I think if you repeat that 10 times, the Chiefs probably win 9 times. And they probably cover like 6 out of those 10 times. I just really don't like these teams. They both have major issues. I feel like the Colts, I think they should be able to run the ball, at least on Tennessee. Tennessee's run defense has been pretty suspect so far, and the Raiders couldn't really take advantage of that because they fell behind early, and Josh Jacobs not nearly as good as Jonathan Taylor. But the Colts have, we don't know if Shaq Leonard is going to play still. Like, I mean, he was full in practice last week, and we thought he was going to be on the field, and then he wasn't. But like his absence might be key. And also Matt Ryan, just like, I thought he was supposed to be the safe quarterback, but then he fumbles twice to give the Chiefs 14 free points to start the game. It's like, what is going on here? I thought he was going to be safer than Carson Wentz. And then Tennessee, they still have their concerns. Like I said, the run defense is bad. Derrick Henry, at least they used him properly last week. They had him as a receiver out of the backfield. So that gives me some hope. But either way, like I feel like this should be a close game. These teams are about even. Mike Vrabel does better as an underdog throughout his career. Like you said, he's done well against the Colts. And also, I feel like the best or the most likely results of this game are Colts by 3 and Titans by 3. So we get both with the plus 3.5. So that makes me like the Titans, but I don't really see a reason to bet this game. There's not much value either way. And like I said, I would love to fade both of these teams this week, but we can't do that because they play each other.
Yeah, I'll be fading the winner of this game the following week, probably no matter what, unless they end up in a game with a line that just makes absolutely no sense. But yeah, I'm probably not going to bet this game unless there's something big on the injury report. Like if Shaq Leonard is out and there are some other questions with the Colts and it stays at 3.5, then I would consider betting the Titans. But I agree with you. I don't really want to have an interest in this game. It's pretty close to a go girl game.
Yeah. Will asking the important question: better football food, pizza or wings? What do you think?
I am a wings guy. That's partially because I am lactose intolerant as of like 2 years ago. So I can't eat pizza that often. So wings are my choice.
So I would normally say wings, but if you're working during football and you're typing, like you don't want to eat wings, like because then your keyboard is going to be ruined. So then I would go with pizza in that case. But you can't go wrong; they're both great. Speaking of great, or rather not great at all, this is the girl game of the week. The Bears at the Giants. This line opened up Giants minus 3.5. It's down to 3. So some interest in the Bears for some reason. Who do you like in this game?
Yeah, this is an absolute go-girl game, so I'm not betting anything on this. I'm on the Bears here for 0 units here. I'm kind of a little upset with myself for not sniffing out the Giants as being a bit of a fraud because, they beat the Titans in week 1, but the Titans aren't good, so we knew that going in. We knew the Titans weren't like the team they were last year when they were number 1 in the AFC somehow. And then the next week, they beat the Panthers to go to 2-0, but they had 2 key turnovers the Panthers had. 2 fumbles that swung that game by 6 points and 3-point win. So the Giants could have easily started the year 0-2. And they were going against Cooper Rush, and they were only favored by 1 point. So it seemed like a good bet, and I probably still would have picked them even if the Giants were 0-2. Of course, the line might be different in that case, but anyway, the Giants just aren't as good as their record says they are. I think is what this all boils down to. Not that the Bears are very good either, but where we're getting the 3 with them as an underdog here, I think that they're probably the right side. Justin Fields and Daniel Jones are actually kind of similar in how they play quarterback right now, and that neither of them can really throw the ball well consistently, and they constantly look to run anytime they're under pressure. So I could see this being a pretty back and forth, even game. So I'm going to be on the Bears here, but I think that the Giants should win, but I just don't think that we're getting any value by picking them as -3. So gonna go with the Bears, not betting this game. So go girl, give us nothing.
If this is 3.5, I'd maybe try to make a case for the Bears, but then that would require actually betting on the Bears, and then I don't want to do that. So I'm not going to touch this game at all. I feel like we should just move on. But I'll say this: like Chicago, like watching Chicago, I watched that game fully for some reason, and it was just so brutal, like how they managed the game. Not just Justin Fields, like Fields played horribly. I think like he had those 2 interceptions were terrible. But like they had a 3rd and 10 on like across midfield and they ran the ball. And then later in the game, they had a 3rd and 9 and they ran the ball. And then right before halftime, they had 40 seconds left on the clock, all 3 timeouts on their own 29, and they just ran out the clock. They just had like no faith in their offensive line, and understandably so. Like their offensive line is dreadful. But the Giants' offensive line is dreadful too. We saw what happened on Monday night. Again, these are 2 teams I would love to fade right now, but we can't again because they're playing each other. So that kind of stinks. But yeah, I think the most likely result is Giants by 3. And then after that, I'm not sure. It's either probably Giants by 6 or Bears by 3. So I don't know. I guess whatever you think is more likely than that, you just take that. But unless you're in an office pool, you should just stay away from this.
Yeah, I would advise not to bet this.
Yeah, so for the record, I'm on the Bears with you for office pool purposes, but definitely not betting this game at all. This game I am betting though. Bills at the Ravens. The line moving up. Bills -3.5, and it's still -3.5. So who do you like here?
Yeah, so I'm pretty torn on this one, so I'll be interested to hear what you have to say about this. I'm currently on the Ravens. I've got them penciled in as a 0-unit pick right now, though. And the reason that I'm not in love with this game is because there's some potentially severe weather for this one. Like it's supposed to pour rain in Baltimore on Sunday, which makes me worried about how this game could possibly go because these 2 defenses are usually good, but they're also pretty beat up. But if it rains, neither side's going to be able to take advantage of the secondary issues that both have. If it rains heavily, if it's a light rain, then Josh Allen would have the advantage. I'll acknowledge that. But if it rains as heavily as I think it's going to, because I think it's the remnants of the hurricane that's down in Florida area right now, it could be pretty hard to throw the ball. So if that happens, I'm gonna like the Ravens because Lamar Jackson can do more with the ball in his hands, and I think might have just a better ability to run the ball if that becomes just a ground and pound game than Josh Allen. Not that Josh Allen can't run the ball; he's just not as elusive as Lamar Jackson. Like Lamar Jackson can make guys miss a ton. Josh Allen will run over them, but he's not going to break off an 80-yard run like Lamar can. So that's the reason I would favor the Ravens in this one potentially. But my opinion could easily change depending on how healthy the Bills are and depending on what the weather is. If all of a sudden the rain just kind of goes off to the right and it's not going to hit Baltimore as hard as we thought it was going to, then I might go on the Bills if their secondary is healthy enough because, we've got a situation in Baltimore where their corners are beat up. So that the Bills are going to be able to throw on them if the weather is good. It's just a matter of whether it's going to be good or not.
Yeah, I haven't looked at the weather yet. I usually look at the weather on Friday because then you get a better sense of what it's going to be on game day. So if it's going to be severe rain, then I'm probably not going to bet this game. But if it's kind of a light rain, or like you said, or like not at all, I actually like Buffalo a lot for a few reasons. Like one, something I love to do is betting elite quarterbacks coming off a loss. And Josh Allen, I would say, is elite. I think he's been elite since the third season, and he's been in the NFL. And since then, he's been 5-3-1 against the spread after a loss. But he's on a 5-1-1 run against the spread. And the only loss was last year. Remember that Tampa Bay game that went back and forth and went into overtime? Like that's his only loss against the spread after a defeat. So you always get the elite quarterback at his best after a loss. And last week I mentioned how many mistakes the Bills made. They just like really shot themselves in the foot. So I think they're going to be in a much better mindset in this game, especially that they don't have to play in 90-degree humid weather like they did in Miami. So that's one thing. The two other things, like they both have to do with the offensive lines. So the Ravens are still missing Ronnie Stanley, which I think is a big issue for them in this game. They've played against some teams like the Jets, Dolphins, and Patriots, like three teams that don't have a huge pressure rate, but the Bills do. And I think the Bills should be able to get to Lamar Jackson a lot. Like we saw what they did to a backup, or not really a backup, but like a replacement left tackle for the Rams. And so I think with Ronnie Stanley, if he's out again, I think Von Miller should have a huge game. So I think Lamar Jackson is going to be on the pressure a lot. And then on the other side of the ball, Baltimore doesn't have a big pressure rate. Like they have to blitz a lot to get to the quarterback. And I feel like Josh Allen's going to really eat that up. So with that in mind, I like the Bills here for a few units. But the weather really is going to dictate it, because we just saw what could happen with the 49ers-Bears game. Like the 49ers were the much better team, and they still lost because of some weird weather stuff that happened. So I don't want to touch it if it's going to be a torrential downpour. But I would still favor the Bills in that instance, but I wouldn't bet it. But if it's going to be fine, then I like the Bills quite a bit.
Yeah, I think if the weather ends up being okay, I'll probably be on the Bills with you. I'm anticipating the weather, which you should never do because the weather forecast changed like this. But all I've been doing today is reading about like the path of the hurricane, how it might impact games, because that's part of my job at Sporting News to know that. But yeah, I think that you're probably right. If the weather's good, the advantage is going to be for the Bills, because they're going to be able to take away the passing element of the Ravens a little bit, and Josh Allen will be able to throw against them. But if we get the rain, I still think I would like the Ravens to cover, just because I think then you don't have the impact of Von Miller as much at all, because the Ravens might just look to run more with Lamar Jackson. And J.K. Dobbins is back. I know he's still coming off of that severe knee injury, but he's better than what they had with Kenyon Drake and Mike Davis and that before. So maybe you could get a little pop if the Bills have to focus on Lamar Jackson. But I'm interested in this game either way. It's going to be a good one. We'll see how the Bills respond. But like you said, elite quarterbacks coming off the loss, usually good to trust them. It's just a matter of whether the weather favors them.
Yeah. Another good quarterback coming off a loss. The Chargers at the Texans. This line opened up Chargers -5. It's down to 4.5. So who do you like here?
Yeah, I like the Chargers here a little bit. They're kind of going to be desperate for a win in this one, and they're going to want to beat the Texans. People might forget, but last year the Texans thrashed the Chargers 3 weeks before the regular season ended, and at that time the Chargers were looking like a surefire wildcard team. It was like, oh yeah, just beat the Texans, and you're going to be in complete control of your own destiny. You'll be able to pretty much walk into the playoffs. The Texans put up like 40-something points on them, and Rex Burkhead looked like the second coming of Walter Payton. So it was a weird game, but the Chargers got crushed. And I think that they're going to be in better shape this time around. Now, I know they're going to be dealing with some key injuries. Obviously, Rashawn Slater is out right now. The left tackle suffered a biceps injury, and that means they're going to have to roll with their backup there. I don't know if Trey Pipkins is healthy on the right side. If so, that means it'll be Storm Norton. And I don't know how Storm Norton is, hanging around the NFL at this point. He's not very good. So that's a little bit of a concern. But we've seen Justin Herbert find success despite offensive line troubles in the past. And it's not like the Texans have an elite pass rush to get after him. So I think that's part of the equation here. We're also getting Keenan Allen back probably. It sounds like he's going to practice this week. And if Allen plays, it's going to give Herbert that shorter yardage receiver that can catch like those 7 to 10 yard passes and just keep the chains moving. Eckler has a great matchup here too. I think the Texans have allowed 477 yards to running backs this year on the ground. No other team's allowed more than 400. So Herbert can kind of lean on Eckler. He can get a little bit healthier from his own rib injury, which clearly impacted him against the Jaguars. He really shouldn't have been out there last week. I don't think they should have given him an extra week off. But I think that he's going to be healthier with the extra time. Sure, the injury to Slater is going to make this a little bit tougher, but I still think that the Chargers should win, should be favored in this game. We like elite quarterbacks coming off a loss. We like revenge games for teams. Brandon Staley should have his team motivated for this one. And we're getting good value. Like as a 4.5-point favorite, the Chargers, that's pretty good. And it's all because they lost to Jacksonville, who is kind of a legitimately decent team that people didn't really realize before. So I like the Chargers here quite a bit. I've got 2 units on them, but I could be convinced to do more depending on the injury report.
Yeah, the injury report's key. Obviously, we know Slater's out, but they could get Keenan Allen back, like you said. Also, Corey Linsley and J.C. Jackson, like all those players are missing against Jacksonville. So really, the Chargers had a skeleton crew on the field, especially when Joey Bosa got hurt. So he's another guy we have to watch out for. But it sounds like they're probably going to get back a lot of these guys. Like we were surprised J.C. Jackson didn't play last week, and so he's probably close to playing. Allen, like you said, probably going to be on the field. If Lindsey's back too, I mean that just makes this play a lot easier, I think. And we're getting great value with the Chargers. The advanced line on this game was -7, and now it's down to 4.5 because of all these. Well, first of all, the injuries, but second, mostly I feel like because of the blowout loss of the Jaguars. I think it's just an overreaction. And this game really reminds me of last week's game with the Bengals at the Jets, where you had Cincinnati coming off not a blowout loss, but kind of an embarrassing loss as a big favorite. They lost to Dallas, and they were a favorite at the Jets, but they weren't favored as many points by as many points as you would think. And they cover pretty easily. And I think this is going to be like kind of a get right game for the Chargers. They're going to try to avoid going to 1-3. I mean, this is kind of a big game for them. And like you said, it's a revenge game. They were embarrassed by the Texans in Houston, and I don't see that happening again. Like you said, Rex Burkhead was amazing in that game. The Chargers' run defense is better now. It's not elite or anything, but it's not the worst in the NFL like we saw last year. Like they're pretty average. Whereas Houston's run defense, like you said, they've allowed huge games to everyone. They couldn't stop Khalil Herbert last week. So I feel like just getting the ball to Austin Eckler and then Herbert, he might not be 100%, but he's definitely going to be healthier than he was last week. So I like the Chargers a lot. This is one of my favorite plays, provided the injury report is not too ugly for the Chargers.
Yeah, I'm going to like this probably one of the best among the early slate. This early slate doesn't excite me that much. We got a lot of go girl games here. And but this is one of the plays that feels like it should be easy if the injury report is good. And then if it's not, it becomes a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, speaking of shaky injury report, Seahawks at the Lions. This line opened up -6, and it dropped to 4.5 as I was typing out this pick. So who do you like in this game?
Yeah, so I like the Lions at this adjusted number. If it had been at 6, I would have been pretty torn, probably leaning toward the Seahawks just because the Lions are pretty beat up right now. I mentioned earlier they lost 3 players against the Vikings: DeAndre Swift, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Tracy Walker. It sounds like Swift's going to be out through the bye, so he'll be missing the next couple games. Tracy Walker is out for the season, unfortunately, with a torn Achilles. And then we don't know about St. Brown, but if he were to miss time, this Detroit offense is going to look a lot different and going to have a lot more trouble moving the ball. They'll be able to run on the Seahawks with Jamal Williams and Craig Reynolds. They've always been able to run since Dan Campbell's been there. Whoever they put onto the field has been good. So I think that the running game will be fine. But if St. Brown comes out, then you're talking about DJ Chark and Josh Reynolds being the top 2 receivers, I think, unless I'm forgetting someone. And that's just not going to cut it as much against the Seahawks defense. I know they have young cornerbacks, but Jared Goff is going to have trouble just finding those guys open as often as St. Brown has been open for him. So I think that Detroit should win this game. They're better than Seattle. Their defense, though, it can give up a lot of yards and a lot of points, as we've seen. Can have key coverage busts. So Geno Smith might be able to put up some points against them. So I don't love this spot for the Lions with how banged up they are. But if St. Brown plays, I'm going to be on them. I'm just not sure I'm going to bet it heavily because I could see the Lions giving up a backdoor cover to the Seahawks. Because, again, Geno Smith has proven that he can move the ball at times. Not always, but at times when given the opportunity. the Seahawks offense hasn't been terrible. So, yeah. Anyway, long story short, I like the Lions, but we have to see the injury report.
Yeah, that's going to be key. If they're down all those players, I'm going to like Seattle gradually more, like depending on how many players they're missing. I love Seattle at +6, given what we know about the injury report. And at +4.5, I'm kind of more hesitant to bet them, but I think I still would bet Seattle at +4.5, given the number of injuries the Lions have, which is a shame because we both love the Lions heading into this year, but they're so banged up right now. I don't know how they're going to cover the spread if the Seahawks are charging back, and I think they could do that, or they could have a lead early on because I think Seattle's offense is shockingly kind of matches up well against Detroit's defense. Because, well, first of all, the Lions are not good against the run. So the Seahawks love to run the ball, so they'll be able to run. But even if they can, like even if they fall behind, the Lions blitz a lot, and Geno Smith's really good against the blitz. I was shocked to see this. Geno Smith against the blitz this year, he's 22 of 25 for 204 yards and 2 touchdowns. That is amazing. And so, I think that bodes well for the Seahawks in this game, especially if the Lions are missing all these players, which they could. Yeah, definitely have to look at the injury report. If Amon-Ra St. Brown's out, I will definitely be on Seattle. So if DeAndre Swift and Tracy Walker are kind of like the only significant lines who are out, I probably won't bet this game. Actually, it might lean toward Detroit. But if St. Brown's out and then they're missing a couple of other guys, I'm going to be on Seattle, and the unit count's just going to rise, just depending on how many injured players there are.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat as you. If those two guys that you mentioned, Swift and Walker, are the only ones out, I'll like Detroit here. And then if more and more guys keep getting added to the injury report, I might flip flop sides. This kind of reminds me of the Bills Dolphins game last week, except with two teams that are significantly worse. The Lions are not bad, but they're very injured. So I think it's kind of like the situation where I'm like, yeah, Detroit seems like the obvious pick here, but if we get to Thursday and it's like, all right, well, they got 7 guys who might not play, then you're going to want to go to the other side, even if it feels like you should be back in the other horse.
Yeah. Joe Johnson asking, isn't Seattle's offensive line pretty bad? So it is bad for sure. But it's not like the tackles are rookies, but I don't think it's terrible. They moved the ball against Atlanta last week pretty well. Not that the Falcons have a good pass rush, but the Lions pass rush mostly comes from the blitz. And that's why I said it's important to look at how the quarterbacks fare against the blitz. So Geno Smith's good against the blitz. And then last week, Kirk Cousins, we know how he is against the blitz. He's pretty bad. So kind of favored Detroit in that game. And we had one other question I wanted to touch on. Andrew's saying Texans stifled the Bears, Broncos, and Colts offenses. So I think that's misleading. So like throughout the Bears game, because the Bears are barely a real team. The Colts had 517 net yards of offense against Houston in week 1. They just made so many mistakes, like at the goal line. They had like the fumble, they missed field goal. Like the Colts would have scored way more points if they were more efficient. And then Denver, offensively in week 2 against the Texans, they had 350 net yards of offense as well. So, they really outgained Houston in that game, but they made some mistakes too. So I feel like Houston has just gotten really lucky so far. I don't think, like I was about to say, they're not nearly as good as their 0-2-1 record says they are, but they could look a lot worse. Like they could have gotten blown out in 2 of those games, but they've kept it close because of the luck factor, and I think that's really going to run out soon.
Yeah, I think it's been a combination of luck, and Lovie Smith's a decent defensive coordinator, so he's got the team playing well at times, but he's also had teams beating themselves. Like Nathaniel Hackett very nearly beat himself in that Texans game. So, can't credit the Texans too much for that.
Yeah, for sure. All right, next game, Jets at the Steelers. This line opened up Steelers -3.5. It's still 3.5. Kind of weird to see the Jets only use 3.5-point underdogs. What do you like in this game?
Yeah, this is another game that is close to a go girl game for me because I don't want to back the Jets. I say this every time I back the Jets. I don't want to, but the line, I'm not convinced that Mitch Trubisky should be a 3.5-point favorite against really anyone right now, just because of the state of his team around him. I mean, Trubisky's been fine in terms of avoiding turnovers, but he's been nothing more than an average game manager, low end starter. Just his receivers are getting frustrated. Like we saw George Pickens getting frustrated last Thursday. Chase Claypool and Deontay Johnson are probably getting frustrated to an extent on some of the missed passes. They're getting more targets than Pickens at least, but I just look at the Steelers team and I just don't see a team that's going to score a lot. So we're talking about like 17 points per game probably. Uh, we saw Trubisky completely fall apart in the second half against Cleveland, couldn't move the ball at all. I can see that happening in one of the halves against the Jets. He moved the ball really well in the first half against Cleveland, then did nothing. The most you're going to get out of him is really half of a game. So I think that he's going to struggle to really move the ball on this Jets offense, Jets defense, which we've seen can allow teams to move the ball. So I don't like Pittsburgh in this spot as 3.5-point favorites. And the case for the Jets is there's a little more than the case for the Steelers here. I think you just look at their offense and say, hey, they've got some receiving weapons, and Joe Flacco didn't always get them the ball, but now Zach Wilson's coming in the lineup, and I don't like Zach Wilson. I think he was the worst starting quarterback in the NFL last year. But I mean, he's still got upside, and if he's healthy and he's ready to go, he might be able to get the ball to Garrett Wilson and Elijah Moore and potentially get the Jets a win. At the very least, I think this is probably a field goal game. So if we're getting the Jets plus 3.5, I like it. I don't know if I'm going to actually bet that because I don't like betting on the Jets. But that's how I feel about it. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I like the Jets a little bit. Not quite the go girl game for me because the Jets, I think, aren't as bad as we might think with Zach Wilson, a quarterback. And I'm not a Zach Wilson fan either. Like, he was terrible last year, but he's a lot better than Joe Flacco at this stage of Flacco's career. Like, Flacco can't really do anything outside of like garbage time. Like Wilson has the bigger arm right now. He'll be able to get the ball more downfield, and he could run around quite a bit. And you could maybe you would argue like Joe Flacco isn't going to make the mistakes that Zach Wilson can make, but we've seen Flacco throw the ball to the other team quite a bit. So it's not like Joe Flacco has been doing anything well outside of those 2 drives against Cleveland. Like, that shouldn't have happened anyway. So I think the Jets have more of an upside with Wilson, a quarterback. And plus, we haven't seen Wilson without inexperience. Like, he's in his second year now. He came into the NFL as a raw quarterback. We would expect him to be better. Like, he's not going to be worse than he was last year. He may not be that much better, but he has a chance to be better at least. And I think he gives the Jets some life here. And the Jets have some intriguing weapons. Like, they have 3 good receivers. Breece Hall is looking pretty good. I feel like he should get the ball more. And so I feel like against the Steelers defense, which has no pass rush without TJ Watt, the Jets should be able to move the ball. Whereas the Steelers, like, I don't see how Trubisky is going to have a consistent offensive attack against the Jets. The Jets have 2 really good cornerbacks. They'll be able to limit the Pittsburgh receivers. The Jets are really good against the run too. So Najee Harris isn't not going to be able to do all that much. And so you have Trubisky here favored by more than a field goal, which I think is a mistake. Maybe if it's Joe Flacco, you can argue, okay, maybe the Steelers are the right side, but I think that against like a viable, possibly a quarterback, I don't think Trubisky should be favored by more than a field goal, especially with a roster that's not all that good. So I'm on the Jets here. I might actually bet them. We'll see if Wilson plays. He's on track to play, but I don't know if it's a guarantee yet. But if he's in the game, I'm going to be on the plus 3.5.
Yeah, you've sold me on the fact that Zach Wilson could be an upgrade over Joe Flacco. Like, Flacco was good at the end of the game against the Browns, and then he had the stat line with 4 touchdowns, and everyone was like, "Oh, Joe Flacco, look at that stat line. He must have been great." And I was like, "No, he got kind of a big completion at the right time, and then his team recovered an onside kick. But if that didn't happen, it wouldn't have looked as pretty." So, yeah, I think Wilson's probably in a situation similar to Justin Fields. He doesn't even have to play that well for his team to have a chance to win against lower level competition. He just needs to not make insane mistakes, and he needs to not skip passes when his receivers are wide open. So we'll see what he can do. I might bet the Jets with you. So it's not quite a go girl game. I'll agree to that. But in my head, the Jets will always be a go girl team. I want nothing to do with their energy right now.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Too many people played Joe Flacco in DFS this past weekend, just based on his week 2 games. Just don't chase, don't ever chase the bad players. That's how you lose in DFS. quick, we had a question here. What do you think about Brandon Cooks in fantasy? Like Cooks didn't do anything last week. He had trouble getting open, which is weird. So I don't know. I would still buy low on him, even though like quarterback situation is bad. But I wouldn't buy too low. Like uh, just like with Davis, almost said Zach Mills. With Davis Mills, he just doesn't have the upside. Zach Mills, the old Penn State quarterback who was potentially a first round quarterback when he played his first few games, but then was terrible at the end. So I'm not a big Cooks guy, but I think he's okay. What do you think?
Yeah, I tend to avoid guys on teams that I don't think are very good, but Brandon Cooks has over the years generated a lot of fantasy points, so you can probably trust him. I think the other thing you can think about with him is you could buy low on him now and hope that he gets traded before the deadline. Like if the Chiefs decided, oh, we want to add that speed threat we're missing since Tyreek Hill is gone and traded for Brandon Cooks, you would have a ton of value all of a sudden. So I think you can think about it from that perspective as well.
That's a good point. Yeah, I think that could definitely happen. Stanley asking Walt, or it should go to you too, because we both bet the Jaguars to win the Super Bowl. What's the Jaguars' chances of going to the Super Bowl? So it's a tough conference. That's the only issue. Like if they were in the NFC, I think they'd have a much better chance. But they were 125-1 in the spring, and we both saw good value with that. And I think they're favored now to win the division. And if they get into the playoffs, anything can happen. I mean, no one expected Cincinnati at this time last year to go to the Super Bowl, and they did. And the Jaguars had the same formula, second year quarterback, like good talent around him, better coaching staff than they had last year for sure. So I think Jacksonville has a chance. It's just such a tough conference that it's going to be tough to get by. The Bills versus the Jaguars. Like I know Jacksonville beat them last year, but still, I would favor the Bills. So if you can get a good number, I think they're worth betting. But I wouldn't count on it though.
Yeah, I wish I had bet the Jaguars to win the division. I still might do that. I think they're 3-1 at Bovada last I checked, but they were like 9-1 before the season, and you were like, "Oh, we should bet them," and I was like, "No, I'm not going to do that." So this feels very much like the Bengals because I was like, "No, we shouldn't bet the Bengals. Why would we do that?" But yeah, like you said, that's such a tough conference, but. If you can get the AFC South winner in there at a long shot ticket with some of your other high end bets, hey, if they ride it out and get to the Super Bowl, you can hedge that. And hey, if they win one game, you can hedge it from there. So, I think that they're fine to bet. They could maybe do it. It's unlikely, but stranger things have happened.
It's true. And speaking of the Jaguars, they're at the Eagles this week. This line opened up -7. It's down to 6.5. So who do you like here?
Yeah, I'm a little bit torn on this one. I have the Jaguars penciled in right now. I know it went through a key number, but my logic here is how much is this game going to mean to the Eagles versus how much it's going to mean to the Jaguars and Doug Peterson specifically. Like Peterson obviously had the falling out in Philadelphia. He was fired because the Eagles wanted to continue to build around Carson Wentz, but then Carson Wentz forced his way out afterward. It was a weird situation all around. But the weirdest thing about it was Peterson had led them to that elusive Super Bowl title. And then just a couple years later, it was like, all right, well, we're done with you. We're going to go look elsewhere. And now he's back in coaching, and he's got a team with a winning record, a team that could be 3-0 if not for Carson Wentz, ironically, throwing a touchdown pass. So I look at all that, and I just think that Peterson is going to say, like, hey, we got a chance to like potentially beat the Eagles here. And this is a good opportunity for our team to show like, hey, we're legit. We're not just beating up on, the Chargers are good, but their quarterback was hurt. People thought the Colts were good, but the Colts aren't as good. He could say to his team, hey, we have a chance to knock out one of the undefeated teams, and I have a grudge against them. I think his players would get up for that. Sometimes the like personal revenge type games don't always play well, but this was a locker room that had Urban Meyer last year. I think that they're going to be backing up their coach like they have through the first 3 weeks so far. So I think the Jaguars can keep it within that touchdown type score. If we were still getting 7, I'd probably definitively say the Jaguars here. But what worries me about this game is that the Eagles are just so talented, especially on defense, that they can throw some confusing looks at Trevor Lawrence, maybe force him into some turnovers. If they take away Christian Kirk, who's he going to throw to? So that's enough for me to say I'm not going to bet the Jaguars right now unless something weird pops up on the injury report. And depending on which direction this line moves and where the sharps are and where the public is, I might swap back to the Eagles. So very torn on this one, but at this number right now, I think I'd favor the Jaguars, but I wouldn't want to bet on it because I like the Eagles a lot.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. Although I penciled in the Eagles, so I think you made some great points where Doug Peterson has the revenge angle. Like, he's. I think one of the comments said like he coached against or he practiced against the defense, so he knows them. He knows Jalen Hurts as well, although like only 1 year together in Philadelphia, but still like he knows Jalen Hurts. So like there's that factor as well. Like he knows the team extremely well. Though the Eagles have added some weapons, like obviously AJ Brown wasn't there, Devontae Smith wasn't there, so it's they've changed a bit, but still he knows. I think he knows the team well enough to have an edge in this game. But the Eagles are a great team, and I don't think they're favored as many points as they should be. Like I think this line should be like -7, -8, something like that. The Jaguars have looked great the past 2 weeks, but they beat the Colts. They destroyed the Colts 24-0, but the Colts are missing Shaq Leonard, Michael Pittman. Like they just weren't quite themselves at all, and plus the Colts aren't that good. And then last week they clobbered the Chargers, but the Chargers are missing a lot of players heading into that game. Justin Herbert wasn't 100%. Like like we didn't even think he was going to play, and then he suited up, and they lost Joey Bosa during the game. So this is a different test for the Jaguars. Like they're playing a real team, and they're just 2 weeks removed from losing to the Redskins, like which is kind of a puzzling result right now. Like you look back at the game, you're like, how did the Jaguars not win that game? Whereas, we just saw what the Eagles did to the Redskins. They sacked Carson Wentz 9 times. The score was 24-8, but it was 24-0 at halftime. And it felt like the Eagles could have won that game 50-0 if they wanted to. I just think the Eagles are a lot better than the Jaguars. But the coaching angle is definitely legit. So that's enough to scare me enough to not bet this game on Philadelphia.
Yeah, I think you make a lot of great points as to why Philadelphia should win. They have the matchup edge for sure. It's just that motivational angle. And, if the Eagles had any sort of look ahead, I would say, well, how are they going to get up and motivated for this game against the Jaguars? But they're playing the Cardinals next week, which I don't think is going to overly excite them. And for those in the comment section asking why or saying that this revenge game won't matter because the Carson Wentz revenge game didn't matter, it's a little different because Carson Wentz, he kind of forced his way out of Philly, first of all. And second of all, he would have had to motivate the entire team around him to do that. That doesn't seem to be his style. But if you look at Doug Peterson, he's the coach of that team. So he can kind of deliver that message throughout the week. And just, if he's just honest with his guys, something that Urban Meyer seems to never be, just from the outside looking in, I have no knowledge of that. So don't come after me, Urban Meyer, please. But Doug Peterson could just say, I'm being honest, guys. I want this one. I want my revenge. Can you help me get it? Can we do this together? Like you could frame it as a team bonding thing. Sure, Carson Wentz could have done the same thing, but he's not the coach. So that's why I think it's more powerful in Peterson's case.
Can I steal that? So if Urban Meyer comes after one of us, it's me instead of you, because
Yeah.
I like it when the people in the know in the NFL or former NFL come after you, because I am already banned from the combine. So I'll just take more of it. It's fine. I don't really care. So we have this next game, and it's I think it's an interesting game. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it. The Redskins at the Cowboys. The line open up Cowboys -3. It's crawled up to -3.5 in some places, but you can still get 3 -120. I'm looking at Westgate and Bovada. So there are plenty of sportsbooks out there that give you a choice. So who do you like in this game?
Yeah, I like the Cowboys here at -3. I know we spent the last 2 weeks kind of dumping on Cooper Rush a little bit here and saying, "Oh, he's a terrible backup. He shouldn't be in the league or anything." But he's actually looked decent through 2 weeks, and I rescind saying that he should not be. He's not a good backup. I think it's time to we stop fading Dallas outright with him, as Fonzie is telling us here. If I pronounced that right, I apologize. I am rooting for Cooper Rush now because he looks like me. You got the red hair and red beard. But really, it boils down to this. I think the Cowboys defense has just played really, really well to start the season. And I think that they're going to be able to rattle Carson Wentz. I mean, he took 9 sacks against the Eagles. Dallas doesn't have quite as robust of a pass rush rotation as the Eagles do, but they still have DeMarcus Lawrence and Micah Parsons. I combined that name into one. So they're going to be able to get after Carson Wentz. He just doesn't get rid of the ball. Like if he doesn't see anything, he just takes the sack. So we saw Daniel Jones get sacked a lot. Carson Wentz, same thing's going to happen to him here. So I think the defense is going to help him out a lot. And if you just look at the Commanders, though, they're the only team in the NFL that ranks bottom 5 in offensive and defensive DVOA. So it's hard to like them really on either side of the ball. Cooper Rush, all he has to do is not make mistakes. That's what he's done so far. He's posted solid stats. He could have had even better stats last night if CeeDee Lamb didn't drop that wide open touchdown in this second quarter. So I think Cooper Rush has done enough for me to say, yeah, I'm going to back him against a weak opponent. So I'm going Cowboys here. I don't know how many units. I did not get to put a unit count on this pick. So maybe a couple of units if I'm feeling good about it. But yeah, I think Cowboys should be favored here as much as I thought they were dead in the water a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, so I'm not blindly fading the Cowboys anymore. To not just to appease Fonzie, but like really, like we were against the Cowboys the past 2 weeks because they were, we thought, or at least I thought, that they were a bad team starting a bad quarterback. Now we know Cooper Rush is not that bad anymore, and I think the Cowboys team overall is not bad either. I was worried about their offensive line a lot, especially after Tyron Smith got hurt and then Connor McGovern. They're already missing Lyle Collins and Connor Williams from the offseason. So I didn't think they're going to block that well. But on Monday night, we saw Jason Peters enter the lineup, and he was massive for them. Like he opened up some huge running lanes. He helped protect Cooper Rush. Just having him on the team. And I kind of even forgot about him. Like I remember that they signed him to the practice squad. I didn't think he was going to play in this game. Like he just wasn't on my mind. But as soon as he entered the game, I'm like, oh man, that's a big like boost for them. And it really was. So I'm no longer concerned about their offensive line, and the receiving core is going to get better because it sounds like Michael Gallup has a good chance to play in this game. Dalton Schultz might return. Obviously, CeeDee Lamb's great. And so like this is suddenly not a bad team, and you could argue with their pass rush and some of their weapons, you could argue they're a good team. So they're suddenly a good team starting a backup quarterback. So kind of done a complete 180 on this. So yeah, I like Dallas here. For the two reasons. Like first, as you mentioned, like I don't know how the Redskins are going to block the Cowboys. Like they like you said, they took 9 sacks. Carson Wentz took 9 sacks. Dallas is going to sack him a lot. So that pass protection is going to be a huge issue. And then on the other side of the ball, I actually like Cooper Rush's matchup here. The Redskins blitz a lot, and Cooper Rush is actually very good against the blitz. Against the blitz this year, he's 20 of 27 for 244 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, which is pretty amazing for a backup. Obviously you would rather have Dak Prescott on the field, but Cooper Rush, I feel like, is good enough to get the job done. There are 2 reasons I'm a little concerned here. Like, first of all, there's a lot of money coming in on the Cowboys, and I think this line's pretty low. It's like suspiciously low. I thought it would be like -4.5 or -5. And you could still get -3, which is kind of nuts. And then second, the Cowboys play the Rams next week, so there might be a bit of a look ahead. The Rams defending Super Bowl champions, and they're coming off a big Monday night win. But I don't think they look past the divisional rival, especially given that they're not a huge favorite. So I like Dallas quite a bit in this game.
Yeah, I think that the divisional rival angle is going to keep them in this one. I could have seen them falling flat otherwise if they were playing a non-NFC East team, just because of that look-ahead element and the fact that Prescott's probably going to be back in week 5, and Cooper Rush has already delivered what he needed to. He got them 2 wins when no one expected them to get 2 wins. I mean, maybe people expected them to beat the Giants, but no one expected them to beat the Bengals. So, I think that I'm going to be on the Cowboys. I'll definitely be betting this. I know the line's a little suspiciously low, but maybe the books know something we don't. But I still think that I have to back Cooper Rush here because I was wrong about Cooper Rush. He belonged in the league, though that does make it strange that the Cowboys decided to cut him before the season.
That's true. Anyone could have had him. So apparently they didn't like him that much. Yeah, that this is why, like you said, a lot of money is on the Cowboys, and that was the reason why I thought this game was interesting to talk about because the line hadn't moved from the advanced line despite the Monday night win. And there's like I'm looking at 71% of the money is on Dallas, which is weird, but the public is right sometimes. All right, last of the early games, the Browns at the Falcons. This line actually was Browns minus 3. And then we had the news that Myles Garrett got into a car accident. Luckily, no life-threatening injuries, and he was actually discharged from the hospital Monday night. So it's good that he's fine, life-wise, but we don't know if he's going to play in this game. So with that in mind, who do you like here?
Yeah, I might be able to get the exact injuries for Garrett. I think they were announced. I think he had like a bicep strain, a shoulder sprain, and lacerations. So his status is TBD. I'm very glad that he's happy. I don't care when he comes back to play. If he doesn't play in this game, that's fine. Take all the time he needs to recover. And it was a crazy thing. Apparently, he was just swerving out of the way of an animal on a wet road. Could happen to anyone. So, but glad he's okay. Anyway, after that long-winded spiel right there, I'm going to be going with the Browns -1. I've got it 0 to 2 units. It's going to depend on the injury report. This is going to be a situation where I just think the Browns have a better roster than the Falcons. And I know missing Myles Garrett's going to matter a little bit, or possibly missing him is going to matter a little bit. But I just look at these two teams and I look at Atlanta's defense and I think, how are they going to be able to stop the running game and Amari Cooper? They just don't have a ton of defensive talent. They have some good cornerbacks and they've actually been decent against the run statistically, but I still don't think that the personnel is quite there. The Browns have a great offensive line and two really good running backs. Jacoby Brissett has managed games very capably. We saw on Thursday night. And with Cleveland having extra time to prepare for this, I just have trouble imagining that Atlanta is going to be able to beat them even at home. So with the line at 1, I just like the Browns. The Falcons just haven't been that impressive to me. I know they beat the Seahawks. I know they made a comeback late against the Rams, but the Rams kind of gave up on that game. And then week 1, they played close with the Saints, but the Saints were overrated in that matchup. The Saints aren't quite as good as people think they are. The only reason we like them this week is because the Vikings are definitely not as good as people think they are. But anyway, I like the Browns this week. Also, someone asked, what is a go girl game in the comments? This is a new term we're coining, and it's based off of one of my favorite memes, which is just a YouTube comment where a guy is like, I love this energy radiating from this person. Like, yes, go girl, give us nothing. Like, it's a joke, it's sarcasm. So, I was saying some of the games last week were like make me think of that meme, like the go girl, give us nothing. So now they are go girl games.
I love it. And I don't think this is a go girl game. Atlanta's terrible, and they were part of a go girl game last week with Seattle. But Cleveland's actually a good team. I want to read off the average yards per drive in the NFL, like for the top 4 teams. Now, tell me which team people probably don't think doesn't belong. Number 1, the Bills, which you probably expect, right? Number 2, Eagles. Number 3, Dolphins with those receivers, and number 4, Cleveland Browns, which is very impressive. Jacoby Brissett has been a lot better than people have given credit for. Now, I know he has a great offensive line in front of him. He has a dynamic running game. He has Amari Cooper. David Njoku finally came alive last week. Donovan Peoples-Jones had that good game in week 1. So he has a lot of talent around him, but he's done pretty well, especially when against the blitz, which is key here because Atlanta blitzes a lot. Against the blitz this year, he's 21 of 28 for 229 yards and 1 touchdown, no interceptions. So really good job for Brissett. Now things are going to get more challenging when he plays tougher defenses. I know, like Carolina is a good pass defense, but after that he played the Jets and the Steelers without TJ Watt, so like not tough competition. But Atlanta does not have anything going for them on this side of the ball outside of AJ Terrell. They don't stop the run at all, which bodes well for Chubb. And Kareem Hunt, and they don't get to the quarterback. They really need a blitz a lot, and that's just really going to put the game in Brissett's favor. And then defensively, we'll see what happens for the Browns. Myles Garrett, I guess, could still play. We don't know. If he does, I think this makes it an easy game. I think the Browns win easily. If Garrett's out and And the Browns are missing a couple linebackers. It's maybe it's a little bit trickier because Mariota's gonna have time in the pocket, and then Kyle Pitts is probably gonna have a good game. So I guess it really depends on the injury report. I'm going to be on the Browns regardless. Whether or not I bet them will depend on if Garrett and Owosu Karamoa play.
Yeah, I think I'm in the same exact boat as you. I don't see a reason to flip sides to Atlanta, barring very surprising injury report. But if Garrett's out, I'm going to have much less interest in actually betting the Browns.
Yeah. Well, asking, Walt, ever think of putting up some wall decor? So Jacob is definitely killing it with his. I'm actually in my basement. We used to record in my office, and I had wall decor. If you check out my old videos, I had wall decor, but I've been banished to the basement like that Staples guy in Office Space because the room next to my office is where my son sleeps, and he goes to bed around this time, so I don't want to wake him up. So maybe we'll get something down here, but we'll
Well, you
see.
weren't you once referred to as a dank mushroom of some sort in like a basement or by Woody Page, right?
Woody, yeah, Woody. Woody Page once called me a dank mushroom living in darkness. So maybe I'm just finally living up to that. It's amazing. That was 10 years ago that he said that. It was pretty funny, but yeah, maybe Woody is right all along. All right, before we get to the late games, please hit like, subscribe, comment below, share this video, visit the link in the description for the merch store. All that would mean a lot to us. It would help us out a lot. So we have 3 games in the late afternoon slate. The first one is Cardinals at the Panthers. The sign open up Panthers -1.5 is up to 2. Who do you like here?
Yeah, so I'm officially flying blind at this point. I didn't get to any of the late games, so this is just me going off the cuff here. But I like the Cardinals here. I'm a little surprised by this line. I'm surprised that the Panthers are favored in this one. I know they're coming off of a win over the Saints that some might think was impressive, but as you outlined earlier, they kind of relied on some fluky turnovers and some missed kicks to get that win there. If they didn't do that, they were looking at 0-3 coming into this game. And I feel like that would be a lot different. Now, I get you can make the case that, if Carolina doesn't have fluky turnovers against the Giants, they win. They were close in the Cleveland game. I get that too, but I think Arizona is the better team. I mean, we know they lost to the Chiefs, but that was because they were so banged up. And then they were getting beaten badly by the Raiders, but then they made a comeback and won in overtime. So I think if you look at the results, yeah, maybe they don't have anything that's overly impressive, but they still have Kyler Murray, who I would take over Baker Mayfield at this point. I mean, Baker has just had a lot of trouble completing passes with any sort of accuracy. I was excited. I thought that he was maybe going to have a bounce back year, but he just hasn't really shown anything. He's not growing at all. So I think Arizona is the right side here as an underdog. They need a win too. Not that the Panthers don't, but the Cardinals need a win. They're the better team and they're the underdog. So that makes me want to back them here.
I was confused about this line as well. The advanced spread on this game was Arizona -2.5, and now it's Carolina -2. So I know we're not going through any key numbers, but this line moved 4.5 points, which is kind of amazing to me. And based on what? I mean, Arizona lost to the Rams, but it was kind of a close game. And the Panthers beat the Saints, but as you mentioned, like they really had no business winning that game. I think the Saints win that matchup more often than not. The Saints made a lot of mistakes, and so the Panthers can't count on that every week. I think there's a great matchup here for the Cardinals. The Cardinals, so like week 1, they were missing JJ Watt and a bunch of other players, but despite that, they're actually, I think they're number 2 in pressure rate in the NFL this year, and they blitz a lot. And I've mentioned some quarterbacks who have been good against the blitz, like Geno Smith and Jacoby Brissett. Let me read you Baker Mayfield's numbers against the blitz. So far this year, Mayfield against the blitz is let me see, he's 16 of 35, 208 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. So definitely not very good. I thought Mayfield was going to bounce back too, but that offensive line has been so dreadful. It's really hard to like blame him. It's kind of like with Daniel Jones. Like you just don't really know how good these guys are because they don't have any help from the offensive line. But he just has no protection, and for some reason, Carolina is not throwing the ball to Christian McCaffrey. Like you think with all the issues they have against the blitz, they'd set up some screens to McCaffrey, but apparently they don't believe in doing that. Just like very poorly coached in Carolina. And yeah, I like Arizona off a loss. I think they're going to be focused.
Matt Rule must be spending his free time looking for some looking at what jobs are out there. With respect to him, things just have not gone well there. I'm seeing an interesting conspiracy theory in the comments here that the new Call of Duty game is apparently coming out, or it's a double XP weekend. So could that impact Kyler Murray's performance? It's worth wondering. He loves his Call of Duty, but yeah, I don't think that's what's moved to the line 4.5 points. And if it is, that would be very funny.
That would be funny. I'm actually all for conspiracy theories like that, and I think there might be legitimacy to it. But he's coming off a loss, so I think he's going to be more focused. Like if he had beaten the Rams, I think you could say, yeah, definitely going to be flat against Carolina. But if they lose this game, they're going to go to 1-3. I think he's going to be focused. I'd be disappointed in him if he plays Call of Duty too much. All right, next game, Broncos at the Raiders. This line also surprised me too as well. The Raiders open up -2. It's up to -2.5. So who do you like in this game?
Yeah, I don't get this line at all. I like Denver a lot here. Look, I know it hasn't been pretty at all, but the Broncos are still 2-1 on the season. And the Raiders are 0-3, and they just really haven't looked good at most points of the season. Like they had a big lead against the Cardinals, but they managed to blow that pretty quickly. I know they played a little bit tighter with the Chargers, but since then they just haven't looked good. They lost to the Titans. They almost made the comeback, but I mean, I don't know. I don't see why we're betting on an 0-3 team as a 2.5 point favorite over a 2-1 team with Russell Wilson as the quarterback. I get it. The Broncos have not been impressive. And I understand that Nathaniel Hackett has just not been a very great coach. And you could argue, hey, they probably should have lost against the 49ers. If they didn't get that one drive, they would have. It's true, but the Raiders defense is probably, well, it's definitely weaker than the 49ers. And if you look at the other defenses that they've faced, it's not like the Seahawks are strong, but the Texans gave the Broncos some trouble because they were able to take away Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy got hurt. So I think that explains why we've seen some offensive struggles. The other part of it is coaching. But I'm wondering if that drive and win against the 49ers is going to motivate the Broncos. I saw some beat reporters saying like the locker room felt more jovial than it had felt in a long time after that win. That doesn't necessarily mean anything, but as they play more and more and get more into the system, Russell Wilson should get better. He needs to just be able to get the ball out of his hand and not necessarily look for the deep shots that he loves to take. He has to pick and choose a little bit more. But still, Denver should not be a 2.5 point underdog in this game. So I will be on the Broncos here. We've backed Nathaniel Hackett every week, and it's only worked once, and it was like excruciating to get it to work. But this line just feels wrong. I don't think that the Raiders are 2.5 points better than the Broncos.
Yeah, so we have this comment here: Broncos about to be the worst 3-1 team ever. I disagree with that completely. They have some really good offensive weapons. Russell Wilson, I still think is a very good quarterback, if not a great quarterback. And their defense is awesome. I mean, we saw what they did to the Niners last week. They held them to 10 points. It was pretty impressive. Actually, their defense has been amazing all year. Like they limited Seattle to 17 points and Houston to 9. They haven't given up more than 17 points to anyone this season. I know they haven't played really any offensive juggernauts, but the 49ers are a really good team. And so to hold them to 10, I think was pretty impressive. And the offense is like, yeah, they haven't scored more than 16 points, but remember week 1, they fumbled twice at the goal line. And if they hadn't, like, even if they get one touchdown on those drives and they get a field goal on the other drive, like that's suddenly 26 points instead of 16, and they win that game and they cover. And I think we're looking at this team a little bit differently if they're 2-1 and they had beaten Seattle by 9 or more. And last week they had that ugly score like 11-10. Like watching that, offense was just so excruciating because that was the last leg of our super contest. We needed that to go 5-0. And it's like, are they ever going to get there? They finally did. But the San Francisco's defense is amazing. They have a great pass rush. They have great players all around. The Raiders have a great pass rush, but they don't have anything else going on for them. We just saw Derrick Henry really have a great game as a receiver out of the backfield. I feel like Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon should do very well in that regard. And the Raiders couldn't stop Ryan Tannehill. So I think that bodes very well for Russell Wilson. And I made this line Denver -3. So like this is like 5.5 points off. This is the biggest line disparity I have this week. So I'm definitely going to be in the Broncos. This is one of my top picks this week.
Yeah, I think it'll be one of my top picks as well. I agree with you. The personnel there is better, and the coaching. I get that that's what people are hung up on right now. I feel like people have buried Russell Wilson though. They're like, he's not good anymore. He hasn't been good for years. Also, as my dad points out, yeah, the Broncos brought in a game management coach, Jerry Rosberg. That element seemed much smoother on Sunday night. I will say that. So credit to Hackett for realizing that there was a problem and not just saying, oh, I'll figure it out. He actually took a step to try to help and fix it. Might not save him outright, but at least he's willing to try. But yeah, getting back to Russell Wilson, I've been talking to just so many people like whose opinions I really respect and like think have very good NFL knowledge and good, strong grasp of the game. They're like, yeah, Russell Wilson's just not very good and he's not good. And he's never been like as elite as people painted in the last few weeks. And or the last few years. And I'm like, no, I don't see it like that. Like maybe he's not as good as he once was, but he still can be a great starting quarterback. He's just going through some growing pains. And we see that with new guys in new places a lot. I think people are a little desensitized to it from seeing, Tom Brady and Matthew Stafford go into their new offenses and kind of right away win a Super Bowl. But it does take time to mesh. And I think that's what's happening in Denver right now.
Well, and remember, Tom Brady in his first year in Tampa, they had some ugly results too. Like they were blown out twice against the Saints, and then once they got Antonio Brown going, and then Rob Gronkowski got into shape, they took off. But it took him a while. So I think there's that. I agree. I think Russell Wilson will eventually get things right, and it could be this week. Like I feel like it could happen either week. They were so close last week. Like remember that Jerry Jeudy deep drop. Like if he catches that pass, this game is a lot different. I think they're close to clicking. So we'll see.
One thing: do we have any concern they play the Colts on Thursday night?
I mean, they're underdogs. I think if they were favored here, and if this wasn't a divisional game, like if they were favored against a Go Girl team, I think maybe you could say that. But I don't think they'll look past the Raiders. I mean, every divisional game is gonna be tough, especially the first divisional game against a team. So I don't think so.
That's how I feel too.
Yeah, we had some good points here from listeners. So Chris says exactly. I was about to point out the Giants Bears winner is going to be 3-1. So yeah, that's going to be the worst 3-1 team we've seen in a while. Andrew asks if people are down on Hackett, do they believe in Josh McDaniels? Who, yeah, I mean this Raider team was in the playoffs last year, and then they added Devontae Adams, and now they're 0-3. So definitely a step backward in coaching. And McDaniels had a one-on-one meeting with Mark Davis after the game, so it doesn't look good. Andrew also says the Raiders pass rush is overrated. Chandler Jones has 0 sacks. The Raiders, I looked it up. The Raiders are 23rd in pressure rate this year. So not a good look for them right now. And it's not like they've played against great offensive lines. Now maybe Chargers week 1, but then after that they played against Arizona and Tennessee, like two teams that don't have good offensive lines, especially with Taylor Lewan out. So you would think the Raiders would put more pressure on the quarterback, but they haven't done that.
Yeah, no, it's a good point.
Yeah. All right. Last of the late afternoon games, Patriots at the Packers. This line opened on Packers -10.5. Some money coming in on the Patriots to move this line down to 10. So who do you like in this game?
Yeah, I mean, my gut says the Packers. I know we have the good team starting backup quarterbacks thing, but I'm not convinced that the Patriots are a good team. Like you can make the case for it, so I might like him in that circumstance. But I'm just not a big Brian Hoyer believer at this point in his career. He was a good backup once, but his last start, I think, against Kansas City, he just did not look very good. So even if the Patriots are a good team, they're starting up someone who I would call at this stage a bad backup quarterback. So I don't like it from that standpoint, especially since the Packers defense is really good. They have a lot of really good defensive backs and they can get pressure. Maybe the Patriots can run the ball on them, but I would imagine that the Packers are going to let their cornerbacks kind of sit back and take away the receivers, and then they'll come up and try to take away the run and make Brian Hoyer beat them. I don't see that happening. And I think that the Packers are going to be able to score enough to potentially cover a 10-point spread. It worries me a little bit, though. It's a little high considering what the Packers' offensive output has been and that the Patriots have been pretty decent against the run so far. But I just wonder if the Packers, with their full offensive line back, with Aaron Rodgers looking good, with Dobbs and Alan Lazard on offense, I wonder if things are going to start clicking for them. And I'm just not convinced that Matt Patricia and Brian Hoyer are going to score the Patriots really any points. So I'm going to be on the Packers for right now, but I don't know. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this one.
Well, let me ask you a question. So, which team is better, the Brian Hoyer led Patriots or the Chicago Bears right now?
Probably the Brian Hoyer led Patriots. Yeah.
Yeah, and so this line is exactly or a half point shy of what that line was. The Packers are minus 10.5 against the Bears. And that was 1 inch away from being a Bears cover. Remember, Justin Fields had that shotgun run for some reason on 4th down at the goal line, and it looked like he was in, but they ruled that he wasn't. And if he was ruled in, the Bears cover that spread, or at least it's a push. And so now that's the same line, and it doesn't really make much sense to me. I think this should be a little bit lower. And I do think this is a good team starting a backup quarterback. Think about like what the Patriots have done this year. So their win was against the Steelers, and they were up by a touchdown. And what was the score? It was like 17-6 or something, and the Steelers scored at the end to make it a 17-14. So the Patriots, I feel like they had control of that game. Their other 2 games against the Dolphins, we talked about how they had that defensive touchdown. The Patriots threw that interception at the beginning of the game, and they're only they allowed 7 points on that 4th and 7. They kept it close against NFL, everyone's number 1 team. And then last week they were down 31-26 when Nelson Aguilar fumbled out of bounds, and I feel like the Patriots had a chance to win that game. So I think the Patriots are at least a half decent team. They still have a good defense. They have some nice receivers. I mean, Devontae Parker finally went off, and maybe Jacoby Myers comes back, and they have a good running game with Ramondre Stevenson and Damian Harris. I think those guys should be able to run well against the Packers, even though the Packers are going to be playing close to the line of scrimmage. And then you have the Packers, who, like as you said, they have trouble scoring points. They're coming off a huge win against Tampa, so I don't know how focused they're going to be. They have to fly to London next week, so this is kind of a sandwich game. It's against the Giants, but still, I really don't see why they'd be focused against the Patriots. And then Jair Alexander got hurt in last week's game. I don't know if he's going to play, but if he's out, that's obviously a big boost for the Patriots. So, yeah, I think this line's too high. I'm going to be betting on Brian Hoyer. Might regret it when Hoyer goes 11 of 30 for 4 interceptions. But I do think the Patriots are the right side. I have trouble seeing the Packers scoring a ton of points to cover the spread.
Yeah, I think I'm going to swap sides and join you on this one. Again, for anyone watching, I did not have time to do notes on these games, so I didn't realize that the Packers are going to London the week after that. I think that could distract them enough, or even if they get into a situation where they're up 14 late in the game, they might just kind of take their foot off the gas a little bit and let the backdoor cover happen. So, I think you're right. I think it's a little too high considering that the Packers haven't really been they haven't been great on offense at all, really. So I think they'll put it together eventually. I think they're pretty close, but yeah, maybe not this week.
So Joe's asking here, any good season prop bets to consider? Jalen Hurts passing leader plus 1,400. I wouldn't do that because the Eagles don't seem to be willing to throw in the second half when they had the lead, which like talked about. I'd have to look at the props. I usually don't play player props. I like team props better, but I'll look this week, and if I see something, I'll add it to the site. All right, we have Sunday night game. Chiefs. It says Chiefs at the Buccaneers right now. Chiefs open up minus 2.5, it's down to 2. But this game might not be in Tampa because of Hurricane Ian. We'll see what happens. But the Buccaneer players have evacuated. I think they're practicing in South Florida, I think, from what I've read. But we don't know where this game's going to be. We don't even know if this game's going to occur at this time. So With that in mind, who do you like given the circumstances?
Yeah, I like the Chiefs. I'm not trying to read too much into the, hurricane displacement thing because we fell into that trap last year with the Saints and Packers playing in Florida, and the Saints just trounced the Packers. That might have been more of an Aaron Rodgers no effort game, but anyway, I like the Chiefs either way though because I just look at the Bucks team and I say that they just haven't shown much of an ability to move the ball on offense. Their offensive line is banged up. We don't know who's playing at receiver. They at least get Mike Evans back this week. That will help them a bit, but I don't know. I just think that the Chiefs are going to be able to get some pressure on Tom Brady with Chris Jones coming up the middle. That's going to really, really bother Brady. He hates interior pressure more than anything else. He also just looks, his body language has been terrible. And I'm not a big body language guy when it comes to NFL players, but it matters for Brady because he's been in the league so long and he looks as upset as he did the last year he was with the Patriots. Like he has that I don't really want to be here right now look on his face. So I think that matters. That's not going to stop him from trying to win. It never will. But I think it's going to be hard for him to go toe-to-toe with Patrick Mahomes in this type of matchup where the Chiefs have at least an ability to get some pressure on him. Getting Mike Evans back helps, and Trent McDuffie being out for the Chiefs is going to hurt their cause here. But I still like Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs in this revenge spot because Mahomes is going to be super motivated for this one because this is his revenge for the Super Bowl 55 loss when the Bucks just pressured him relentlessly and they got crushed 31-9. So the Bucks players, I know I said I wasn't going to read too much into the hurricane thing, but they might not be 100% focused on this because they have they have a hurricane coming, so that might be at the forefront of their mind. So I think the Chiefs are the right side as long as it stays under 3, but I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I like the Chiefs as well. The Chiefs put more pressure on the quarterback than any other team in the NFL. So that bodes well for sure for them against Tom Brady. Like you said, Brady hates that interior pass rush. And we saw what the Chiefs did to Matt Ryan last week. Not that Brady is Matt Ryan or anything. Obviously, he's much better. But Ryan had this 2 strip sacks. The Chiefs turned them into 14 points, and they really should have won that game. As I said, they made so many mistakes. If Kelsey catches that touchdown pass, the Chiefs win. If they don't try that weird fake field goal, they probably win that game. If Chris Jones doesn't have that stupid personal foul penalty, they probably win that game. So, any one of those things could have happened, and the Chiefs would have prevailed. And if that would have happened, they'd be 3-0 right now. And I think we'd be seeing this line at 3, maybe even 3.5, given the situation with the hurricane. And I think that could be a factor. It wasn't for the Saints last year. But I think it might be a factor this time just because they just evacuated on Monday and now they're practicing in a different location. We don't know when the game's going to be played, and they're worried about their homes and their families. And I don't know how focused they're going to be on a football game. And plus, you said the Chiefs, they've had this game circled for 2 years. I mean, after losing the Super Bowl like that, they're going to want revenge. And we all know Mahomes has that big chip on his shoulder. So as long as this line's under 3, I'm definitely going to be liking the Chiefs.
Yeah, it just seems like such a good spot for them and such a bad spot for Tampa Bay.
Yeah, Chris, because Brady's worried about Hurricane Giselle as well. We both like the Chiefs here. I like the Chiefs a little bit, maybe for 2 to 3 units, maybe 4 units, depending on the injury report for Tampa. All right, the Monday night game, and then we'll talk about our survivor picks, plus I have a teaser for you. But the Monday night game is the Rams at the 49ers. This line opened up 49ers -2 and is up to -2.5. So who do you like in this game?
Yeah, I like the Niners in this spot. I mean, their defense was really good against the Broncos, and I know a lot of people will read into Jimmy Garoppolo's performance and say, oh, well, he was really bad and they didn't win because he stepped out of the end zone for a safety, which was very bad, obviously. But, that there's always some sort of silly mistake in losses, and that just happened to be the one in that game. But I'm not reading into too much the 49ers only scoring 10 points in that game because the Broncos defense, I think, is elite. That stop unit is just insanely good. Their cornerbacks are good. They had Josie Jewell back. They have a good pass rush. Jimmy Garoppolo was going against a really, really good defense there. The Rams also have a good defense, but it's not quite as strong as the Broncos at this point. They were without 3 of their top 4 corners last week. Jalen Ramsey played, which was huge, obviously, but the Cardinals couldn't take advantage of that because they only had one good receiver out there, Hollywood Brown, and he had a big game. But I think that with Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel, if the Rams are still banged up at corner, I think that they could, the 49ers will be able to better take advantage of that. And I also think that they're going to be able to run the ball a little bit better against this Rams defense too. Now, as Andrew just mentioned, not having Trent Williams is going to be a problem for them because he's the best lineman in football right now, and their replacements had a lot of trouble against the Broncos. Now, I think they can survive against the Rams, but Kyle Shanahan's going to have to scheme up some quick passes just to make sure that they're not under pressure. The good thing is that the 49ers are built for that type of offense, to get the ball in the hands of Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, and run it with Jeff Wilson Jr. So I think that they're going to have a chance to do that. So I like the 49ers here. I don't know how much I'm going to bet on this. I need to see the injury report for the Rams before doing anything. But you can tell me why I'm crazy wrong or just kind of spewing things out because I didn't study for this game. So let's hear what you got to say.
No, I think you're on point. I like the Niners as well. And the Trent Williams injury is going to be big in some matchups. We saw it have an impact in the second half against Denver, but I don't think it's as big of a problem against the Rams because the Rams pass rush comes from Aaron Donald. Like, they don't have Von Miller anymore. So I feel like it's not that big of a factor in this game as it could be. And I'm more worried about the other left tackle. We saw Joe Noteboom in week 1 really struggle against Von Miller, and now he has to go against Nick Bosa. So I think that's going to be a big issue for the Rams, blocking Bosa. And the Rams have been kind of off this year. Like, haven't they? Like, week 1, they got blown out by Buffalo. We did not expect that. We expected a close game. Week 2, they handled their business against Atlanta. Sure, Atlanta's a terrible team. And then last week, they had trouble putting away Arizona. Stafford and Kupp had that miscommunication. Allen Robinson dropped 2 touchdowns. It seems like the Rams could be playing better than they are. I don't know if they have a Super Bowl hangover or something, but they just aren't themselves right now. And the 49ers, this is a big game for them because they're 1-2 right now. They're trying to avoid going to 1-3, and this is a revenge spot in the NFC Championship from last year. And the Niners lost that game, but outside of that, they've had the Rams number over the years with Kyle Shanahan. And given that the injuries the Rams have in their secondary, I feel like Kyle Shanahan is going to be able to scheme up his receivers to be in great spots against some backup Rams cornerbacks and maybe a safety with Jordan Fuller maybe out again. So I like the Niners quite a bit in this matchup.
Good. I'm glad I didn't fail the test here on the last one.
Nice. Yeah. So we have a lot of agreements, and so let's get to my teaser for the week, and then we'll do Survivor. My teaser is Arizona +8, Denver +8.5. And given that we both agreed on those sides, I think you'll like this teaser. So my thinking here, obviously, you want to go from 3 through 7 to get all the key numbers. We do that with both these games. And, for Arizona +8 to lose, Baker Mayfield is going to have to win a game by 9 or more points, which I don't see happening. And then Denver +8.5 is very appealing to me because Russell Wilson always keeps games close. Like, even if the Raiders jumped out to a big lead, I have faith that Russell Wilson is going to be able to mount a comeback. So I like this teaser.
Yeah, we saw Kyler Murray mount to come back against the Raiders just a couple weeks ago. So I like this a lot. I feel like those 2 games, if those 2 teams don't win, then they're going to be within 1 score.
Yeah. Joe's asking any rookies from this year's draft standing out. I feel like all the rookies are standing out. Like, we see Aiden Hutchinson having a great season for the Lions so far. He had 3 sacks against the Redskins, and then all the receivers are doing well. Like, Garrett Wilson had some big games. Olave's catching all these deep passes. Drake London's dominating despite Marcus Mariota. Jahan Dawson's caught some touchdowns. I feel like every rookie receiver is doing well. We'll see about the running backs. I feel like Breece Hall needs more opportunities. Tyler Smith of the Cowboys. Yeah, I feel like all the rookies are doing well.
Yeah, it's been a surprisingly good start to their careers for the rookies, because this was thought to be a weaker draft class, but it looks like there is plenty of good role players, especially at receiver. Though that unit, as you mentioned, it's stacked. Drake London, it's going to be really exciting to see what he can do with one of these top quarterback prospects from the 2023 draft class. or if Desmond Ritter comes in later in the season and proves to be a quality starter. But yeah, I've been pretty impressed with what I've seen out of him.
Yeah, Romeo Dubs, another receiver, doing well despite being was he a fifth round pick. So yeah, pretty good receiving class and good class overall. So we're doing Survivor. This is what you've had so far. You've had the Ravens, Broncos, and Bengals. You are alive despite not playing in Survivor, which is I think pretty funny because everyone who is playing a Survivor has been knocked out for the most part. I was with the Niners, but then I won with the Rams and Eagles, and this week I'm going with the Packers. I like the Patriots to cover, but seems like a no-brainer here. Like Aaron Rodgers should be able to beat Brian Hoyer. Like crazier things have happened, I guess. As mentioned earlier, the Jaguars beat the Bills last year. So any team could beat another, but the Packers are the overwhelming top team, and you're not going to get a better situation with them again this year, especially considering that they already played Chicago at home.
Yeah, I think the Packers are going to be my pick this week too. They're the only team I look at on this week's slate that I'm like, yeah, they're definitely going to win. Like, I can't imagine a scenario in which Brian Hoyer beats the Packers. It would take a lot to go wrong for Green Bay and a lot to go right for New England. So, yeah, I think the Packers are the obvious choice at this point, unless you've already used them. At which point, yeah, I don't know which direction I'd go. Glad I have the Packers on the card still.
Yeah, if you already used the Packers in week 2, I would consider either the Chargers or the Eagles. We both talked about how we like the Chargers to bounce back, and you want to make sure you look at their injury report. But assuming it's as good as we think it might be, I think the Chargers should be able to beat Houston easily. And then the Eagles, I know there's a revenge spot with Doug Peterson, but the Eagles are the much better team. So ideally, you'd want to save them, but you could definitely use them in an emergency.
Yep, for sure.
Okay, that is it for this week. Do you have anything to plug?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Jacob Camenker. I'll tweet my picks out this week per usual. I think we were a great 6-1 on picks. The only wrong one being the Giants on Twitter. So follow me there. I'll have some stories over on sportingnews.com too. You can check that out for all your NFL needs. And I'll tweet out some of my best stuff too. So feel free to check those out on Twitter. And if you got questions, send them my way and I'll try to answer them.
All right, sounds good. I'm at walterfootball.com. We're going to have pick updates throughout the week on Thursday, Saturday, and then the final thoughts on Sunday. Fantasy football rankings, if you're into that. And then our mock draft, our 2023 NFL mock draft will be updated tomorrow morning, which I'm going to do tonight. Also, confidence pool picks, survivor advice. That's all on the site. Tons of draft content from Charlie Campbell is the best draft content you'll find anywhere from him. So yeah, lots of stuff at walterfootball.com. Let's have another great week. We were awesome last week, and hopefully it continues. I'm looking forward to this week's slate.
Yeah, me too. Let's see what we can do.
All right, sounds good. I'll talk to you next week.
All right, sounds good.
All right, bye.
Bye.